Good morning, everyone. We're going to get started shortly, in about a minute or two. Are you guys seeing my screen okay?
No, I don't see a screen. I just see Charlie and me.
Okay, let me see, sharing. Okay. Hmm. Logistical issues here. Here. I'm going to try something different and turn off one of my screens. Options, view. Hmm. Still not seeing a screen, Sam, Charlie?
No? Oh, we could get going with the update while you work on the screen.
Audio.
Or should I share my screen? Then,
Well, you can share your screen. Sandra can send you the presentation. You can share it.
I've got it.
See you on the
Can
web.
you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. At least we have that. Sorry about this, guys. Let's see, but you're still not seeing my screen.
Right. And for some reason, your voice doesn't sync to your image as well.
Okay. Share my screen. Nope. Slideshow, play from start.
All right. There we go. That's nice. I see
There
it.
we go. Oh,
And now, okay,
now
that's
we're good. Now we're good. Alrighty. Well, this will be interesting. So good morning, everyone. We have, let's see, in attendance, about 57 in attendance. 54 in attendance. We've probably had about 100 register, so I know other people will be joining, but we would like to get started in essence of time. My name is Sandra Delancey, and I'm the moderator for today's webinar. We've muted your audio, but we will allow for ample question opportunities. So if you have questions for our presenters, please send them to me using the question feature of GoToWebinar. The presenters have made today's slides available as well, so those will be put up on the webinar session, and they will be mailed out after the session. I'm excited to be working with two DMV real estate leaders, Sam Jackman and Charlie Einsman, who are business partners at Clear Sky Financial LLC. Today, they will be presenting the third webinar in our real estate investing series. In today's webinar, Sam and Charlie will give you an update on the current state of the market and the real estate market in the DMV. And then they will dive into the anatomy of a real estate hard money deal. So this should be very informative for you all. Charlie has more than 20 years of real estate experience. That's Charlie Einsman. those who don't know, and is particularly skilled in structuring and negotiating win-win solutions for distressed sales. Along with Sam Jackman, Charlie co-founded Clear Sky Properties LLC in 2005 and Clear Sky Financial LLC in 2013. Sam Jackson has more than 25 years of experience in a broad range of real estate endeavors, particularly with distressed property sales and development. He primarily takes the lead for loan closings and administrative duties for Clear Sky Financial, while he and Charlie collaborate on prospective deals. So take it away, Charlie.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you guys for attending. It means a lot to us. I see a lot of repeaters, which makes us pretty happy. So the first thing, what I'm going to talk about is the status of the real estate market in the DMV, and I'm going to cover it from 6 topics. I'll go over some of the current market indicators. I'll go over residential rentals. I'll go over the fix and flip space, our hard money business. I'll talk about some commercial assets, and then what I'm going to do is end it with the future of what we think the market's going to hold in the next 3 to 6 months. So let me get started with the market indicators. Currently, the market indicators, even though we're in the middle of a pandemic, is, in my opinion, very bullish. Interest rates on mortgages, 30-year mortgages, continue to be at an all-time low across the country, but specifically even in the DMV, they're low. 30-year mortgages are low. I mean, a lot of these buyers can buy and get a mortgage and pay less than what they would normally pay in a rent payment for that particular asset class. The next indicator that we keep an eye on is basic market inventory, especially in Northern Virginia. Our market's at probably a 15-20-year low as far as active inventory. And so what's happening is you have a lot of buyers out there, a lot more buyers than sellers. And so a buddy of mine put a house on the market yesterday. It was a 1-level house in Dale City on Granby Road. He priced it at $299. It's 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, about 1,000 square feet. He probably should have priced a little higher. In the first 2 days, he had 8 offers in a 2-day period of time. So especially in the entry-level marketplace, we're seeing a lot of demand there. As far as a higher-end asset class, we're seeing a lot of that stuff starting to sit a little longer. I don't know if that's because of the millennial generation not buying and moving people up, but the higher asset class is sitting around too. So that's another indicator that we have to keep an eye on, is on the higher asset space. And like I said, we're seeing a lot of that sit around a little bit longer. And the next thing that we keep an eye on as far as indicators are concerned is obviously focused on the pandemic. We're very interested in seeing what's going on in Florida with the increase in cases. So we're keeping an eye on that. Our numbers in the DMV as far as new cases on the pandemic, if you guys have been watching the statistics, especially the number of new cases per week, like if you take it on a rolling week, the number of new cases in the DMV are going down. And so we're having new cases back into the middle of March timeframe. So that's kind of bullish as well. But we do feel that there is going to be maybe a second wave in this pandemic in the late winter. So we're keeping an eye on that. So basically, low interest rates, low inventory, pandemic numbers, those are the market indicators that we keep an eye on daily. The next thing I want to get into is our rental portfolio and how that's doing. We have about 50 rental properties in the DMV. And these are residential rentals. These are 50 different doors spread out in different areas. And so we're running at a 98% monthly rental clip. So what that basically says is we only have one problem tenant. And so having 1 out of 50, having a problem tenant that hasn't paid for 3 months, I think for us, it's pretty bullish. Now, the reason why it's very bullish in our neck of the woods is because we don't really have entry-level properties per se. We have like the next level up of asset class. And so the majority of our tenants are in the government space, they're in technology, they're the non-service oriented workers who are starting to get their jobs back. And so the next thing I want to cover is on rentals is that one of the things that we're doing as far as new rentals, I've got a couple of properties that have either we just recently purchased, that we're renting out for the first time, or that we have turnover on our rentals. And usually what we do is we put the end of our leases around June, July, so that we can catch people moving for the new school year. And so, but one of the things that we're looking at, obviously we check credit and the amount of income, but the biggest thing that we check on new rental applications is the source of income. We're very concerned about the source of income because we are in the middle of a market shift. And so that, believe it or not, is a pretty big parameter that we probably wouldn't have looked at about a year ago. And so for us on our rental portfolio, we are very, very healthy. And so that's a good sign. The next thing I want to cover is what's going on in the fix and flip business. The fix and flip business is very, very bullish right now. As far as we're concerned, our contractors have never stopped working. We're in the middle of probably 17 to 20 projects within the DMV. They're either active on the market, they're either under contract, or they're either in process of renovation, or we're in the process of purchasing them. And so what we're trying to do, again, like we talked about last month, is that we are in a hurry to get all of our inventory on the market within the next month, just because what I'll talk about at the end of this discussion is what I think about the future. And so we're in a rush to get all of our inventory on the market. Once our inventory is on the market, it seems to be moving pretty good as long as it's priced right. And most of our inventory is on the entry level price segment. And what we're doing on our inventory is that we're making sure every single property obviously is vacant. We're also making sure that every single property has a 3D virtual tour, because people are buying houses sight unseen these days. And so we're also putting combo boxes on all of our properties, which we've always done. And we're allowing realtors, if they don't feel comfortable in the pandemic showing their clients, we're allowing the realtors that let their clients in self-guided as long as they lock the house up. So that seems to be working for us as well. So the fix and flip space on the sell side is good. Now on the buy side, Northern Virginia is very challenging. Like I said, the inventory is very low in the retail market, but even on the wholesale market, inventory is low on the wholesale market because foreclosures have not really come to the courthouse yet. Now, as of a week and a half ago, foreclosures are starting to come back to the courthouse steps. And so what that's going to do is that's going to mean a lot more distressed asset inventory is going to start coming to the market. The seller is going to be a little bit more motivated to sell as they weren't before. And so you got to keep an eye on that. So I think from the fix and flip space in the next 2 or 3 months, I think you're going to start to see a lot of opportunity in the inventory. And so if you guys are wholesalers or fix and flippers, the number one thing I would do is keep your marketing going. The next thing I want to talk about is our hard money business. And we're going to go ahead and show you guys how we build a loan later on in this presentation. But our hard money business, I couldn't tell you, is growing in leaps and bounds. We look like we're going to double during this pandemic. And if I were to tell you that pre-pandemic, I would have said we would have doubled in the next 5 years. It would have taken us 5 years to double, but our hard money business is absolutely flying off the shelf. And the reason why that's happening is because we are so into this market that we know exactly what's going on. We know the low inventory, we know the low interest rates, we know properties that are moving at a subdevelopment level. So we feel really, really confident in lending into this marketplace. Now, one of the things that we did do on the hard money side is we just tightened up some of our loan parameters. And so as we go through the presentation on how we build a loan, I'll talk about what we've done on those loan parameters a little later.
Hey,
The
Charlie?
next thing, yes, ma'am.
One quick question. Someone is asking, Tara is asking if you will be going to courthouse auctions. And I'm also hearing from a couple of people that our audio is low for some reason. So if you can speak a little louder, that would be great. I know that's not a problem for you, Charlie.
Okay, will do. All right.
Will you be going to courthouse auctions?
Well, that's a future question. The answer is yes, I've already been. A couple things. Prince William's had a few auctions. I went to a Prince William auction last Wednesday. Matter of fact, a week ago today. I had to go into the courthouse before I actually went to the auction, and I actually had to get my temperature checked because I needed to go into the courthouse to do a couple things before I went to the auction. So Prince William has started, Fairfax has started. On the hard money side, we had a troubled borrower, and so we were waiting for this pandemic to finish, and we actually foreclosed on this particular borrower. So we had actually 4 properties go under a foreclosure sale, an Alex Cooper sale, and that was last Thursday. And so we ended up selling one, taking 3 back. this was a borrower who sort of took our renovation draw money and used it for other projects. And so we got wind of that and we weren't very happy about it. And he was, a few months late on payments. And so we just put the kibosh on him and took the properties back. And we're in the process of renovating those properties and getting them back on the market. So the courthouse auctions have opened up very slightly because some of the substitute trustees were scared when phase 2 and phase 3 would open up to allow for gatherings. But now they've opened up. So what you're going to see, and that I'm seeing, is that first week of July 6th and 7th, I'm seeing a heavier load. And I think middle of July, end of July, you're going to see a very heavy load as far as courthouse auctions are concerned. And so from a distressed asset standpoint, that's a good thing because that's going to bring a lot more distressed assets to the marketplace, not only from a foreclosure standpoint, but from an REO standpoint and from a pre-foreclosure standpoint. So the opportunities are going to start to happen in the fix and flip space, which leads me into my next segment of this discussion is the commercial market. And so the commercial marketplace, we're seeing a couple things. The industrial manufacturing properties are holding up really, really well. The data centers, anything dealing with the data center is holding up really well. If you're in the retail space, you're probably getting clobbered right now. If you're in the office space market, you're getting clobbered. And what we're starting to see is I've had conversations with certain land developers, and they're very concerned because what they think is going to end up happening is that these owners of the commercial space are going to end up repurposing their office space for residential. And so that might bring more inventory to the market starting spring and summer of next year. So that's something that you got to keep an eye on in the commercial space. And my last topic that I want to cover is what we feel is going to happen in the future of this market. We're mildly concerned about what's going to happen because one of the things that you got to realize is that we look at things from a 3-month viewpoint and a 6-month viewpoint. We don't go any further than that. From a 3-month standpoint, we're still very, very bullish on the residential side. But when you look into the 6-month window, we're not so bullish. We're very cautious right now on the 6-month window. And the reason behind that is because we have an election year coming up. And so there might be a change of administration. And so with the change of administration, what happens during an election year, interest rates are still going to continue to be low for another 6 months. But what happens in an election year is that consumer confidence kind of stays neutral, it might go down. And so what happens in the housing market is they stop buying houses. So that's something that we got to keep an eye on. And so what I'll do now is segue the discussion into Sam and what his feelings are about this market.
Thanks, Charlie. So we are looking at some consumer changes, what the product is that people are looking for. It won't surprise many of you that a lot of people are now looking for homes with a home office. So if they had just enough rooms for their family, now they needed a place with a home office that's designated, maybe a larger one. I have people living, 2 offices in one. So large home office spaces are certainly becoming relevant. In the urban area where elevator access to condos, used to prevail, fast elevator access in very vertical buildings. People aren't that excited to get into an elevator and probably not going to be for quite a while. So we're seeing an uptick in interest in the smaller condo developments that have stair access. So that's an interesting change in the market. And not many people that interested in getting a house that it's a project anymore. You're probably aware Home Depot, it has never been busier. But folks are not that excited to try to provision materials for themselves. The lines are very long at Home Depot and elsewhere, so making home projects, challenging for the individual homeowner. Which brings us to renovations. What's going on in that space? Our budgets for them are coming down for the first time in many years. We have a lot of labor available in the marketplace, and that hasn't been the case. We can get things done with immediacy. If they're physical things, we can get a team of, say, roofers out almost immediately before we were waiting long periods of time, a couple weeks to get a roofing crew moving or a drywall crew, and took quite a while. So now we're able to get that done quicker, but what we don't have access to is some specialty materials, even pressure treated lumber for building decks is not very available. People have been buying the heck out of home improvement projects from suppliers since they've been home. So, if you need a vanity cover, it might take 3 weeks to get it. So some of the materials are on back order, and as I said before, the lines are very long. So so your contractor supply side is important to consider when you're looking at the total length of a project. With our contractors, we're reinvesting in ones that have been successful with us and giving them more projects, letting them see alternative bids that we're getting from others so that we make sure they're competitive. And then we're also expanding our contractor team. Since we're doing things around the entire Beltway, we want to have a contractor who's within 20 minutes of their office or depot of where their equipment is. We want them to be within 20 minutes of our job site, so we're not spending a lot of extra time with people moving back and forth, materials, equipment, and themselves, labor. So we're looking at a lot more demand than there is supply, as Charlie touched on. Even though demand is way down, supply is down even further. So property is moving quickly. In our hard money business, we've seen a huge demand. A lot of our competitors in this space have moved out of it. They were getting Wall Street money, or they were getting one-off money from people who wanted to just lend out of their IRA directly to one borrower. All those people have left the marketplace. Just a vast number of people coming to us now and having us review deals for them, people who have borrowed from others and have a good track record in performing. So that's been great. I think that covers what you did in Charlie. So if you want to move on and get into how to build a loan, I think that'll be important. Sandra, did we have one question here? So what percent of our money is hard money is rentals compared to fix and flip? I would say 90% of our money is fix and flip. 10% the people buy and hold, and they use us as a bridge to permanent financing.
We also had another question, Sam. Do you anticipate mortgage forbearance to have any effect on the new foreclosures?
Yeah, certainly if you've been subject, if a property is subject to a forbearance, I mean, the intention was that the person who had requested the forbearance is going to get back to work. And it's everyone's hope that everyone does get back to work. But for those who don't, that will put them into a later cycle of foreclosure. Certainly not something with immediacy. I don't foresee forbearance related foreclosures for at least 9 months from now. And that's forecasting and improving health of the economy and health of the public health as well.
Yeah, and that's a good question, because you're hearing all this mythology about how there's going to be this big foreclosure wave, there's going to be this, there's going to be that. Guys, this isn't like 2007, 8, and 9 where you had the foreclosure wave. This is going to be more of a controlled foreclosure wave. And the reason is because the government is involved. The government has stepped in, and people lost jobs because of the pandemic, the stay-at-home policies. So what the government is going to do is they're going to step in and try and control the servicers and make them do forbearances at all costs, especially on the FHA side, the VA side, the Fannie Mae side, and the Freddie Mac side. So what that's going to do is that it's going to create a more controlled foreclosure pipeline. So we're not going to have a wave of foreclosures like people are predicting, like a big tidal wave. The June, July's, and part of August foreclosures are pre-COVID issues. So all the stuff that you're seeing are pre-COVID. For example, like the sale that we did last week, this was pre-COVID. Matter of fact, we kept waiting and waiting and waiting for the first possible time we could get these properties go to auction to send them to auction. And these other trustees are doing the same thing. But remember, these are pre-COVID auctions. And so you might start seeing an uptick in foreclosures. I'm thinking late third quarter, beginning fourth quarter. But the forbearance is going to be a big, powerful tool. And hopefully people will be able to use that tool, tack the payments onto the end, and stay in their homes. Now, the downside to a forbearance is that they can tack the payments on, which is a good thing. But the downside is that the foreclosure will be a lot easier to orchestrate. So part of your forbearance agreement is going to allow the servicer / lender to foreclose on your property in a quicker manner. So it's a good and a bad thing, but it will be a government-controlled foreclosures. You'll see.
And when you have a delayed window on foreclosure, it's been our experience in 08. The longer you wait on a foreclosure. So if the person is not recovering, they're not going to be doing any improvements to their home. So if the government pushes it out a year or 18 months, then what you're going to see is a lower price point for the out price at the auction, because the house is going to have been deteriorated by then. Went from a regular residential house to one where they weren't making payments to one where they're not doing any improvements. And then when they know that they're going to go to foreclosure, you'll have a year time when absolutely nothing has been done to the property, and they'll deteriorate quick.
All right,
We
Sandra,
have a
any other?
couple more questions, Sandra, that we want to hit before we.
We do have a few more questions, but why don't we get started
Okay.
with the next session, our next topic, and then we'll get back to the questions at the end. So continue to send questions. We'll answer them at the end.
Okay, so
Right,
the
Charlie.
next thing that we want to cover, and I think it's going to help probably, I don't know, 95% of you guys, is we're going to talk about our hard money business a little bit, and we're going to go through our steps of how we build a loan. And we're going to, it's a very simple model, which why I think people like using us. And so we're going to go through how we build a loan. And this particular example that I'm going to go show you guys, actually this loan is closing today. Matter of fact, it might be even closing right now as we speak. And so the first part of the loan, I call it the loan handshake. And the first part of the loan handshake is basically what we call the client package, right? So the client starts off, well, they'll either call me, text me, or email me, but honestly, guys, please email me. It's much easier, because if I have to jump from email to text to phone call to email to text, it's much easier if I have everything in front of me. And so what this is this actually is an introductory email from a client that wanted a loan. And this email came in, I don't even remember when. I think it might have been 10 days ago. Actually, it says we're scheduled to close next Wednesday, 6/24. So this must have come in Monday or Tuesday of last week. It's normal for us to close a deal in 7 or 8 days or less. I'm not talking business days, I'm talking physical days. And so this is sort of normal for us. And so in this particular client package, he supplied me with a lot of good stuff. Number one, he supplied me with obviously the address and where it's located. He described the property, which in this case, this is a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath, semi-detached house in Washington, D.C. It's in a development called Riggs Park, if you guys are familiar with that. He actually gave me the renovation budget. He went pretty detailed into his renovation budget. And he also gave me an after repair value with some included comps and a requested loan amount. Now, from an email package, this is absolutely perfect. This is exactly what we need. And so what I could do is I could build a loan from this. Now, what you're not seeing is a bunch of riffraff. What you're seeing is that we are going to build a loan based on the asset, because we are an asset-based lender. I ask about credit sometimes. I don't think we've ever really checked credit once. We don't even have people fill out an application. It's as simple as, if I like the asset, if I like the ARV, if I like the renovation budget, and I think it could be done in budget, on time, get the house on the market, then odds are we're probably going to do it. So this is what the client provides. And so we live by the words trust and verify. So what I'm going to tell you is that I trust what he says, but the next thing that we need to do is we need to verify what he says. So what I want you guys to keep an eye on is I want you to keep an eye on this thing called the after repair value, where he says 625 to 635, and that will take me to the next slide.
Okay. Hey, Charlie, one question, since you talked about credit scores. Are you guys looking at new minimum credit scores criteria for your fix and flip currently?
Not really. I mean, I'm looking at the asset, and I'm looking at the price of the renovation. And so if the renovation is very steep, then all we're doing is we're adjusting our lending parameters. And so, however, we do have a broker business called Clear Sky Nation, where I could take you out. I mean, one of the things about us is our rates. We have rates and points with our loans. And so if you want, a little bit more competitive rate, I could broker that out, but you're going to have to come up with a lot more capital, and your credit scores have got to be 650 and above. And so where our forte basically is just straight asset-based lending. You've got to be able to execute. We are more concerned with your contractor than your credit score, because your contractor is what protects us. Your credit score does not. Now, if you don't pay on your loans, we'll help you with that. But your contractor is a lot more important to us, and we need your project done correctly and on time and in budget, because that's where our risk is. Our risk isn't really necessarily with maybe a bad borrower with a bad credit score, because remember, a lot of these guys are trying to get back on their feet. We understand that. And so we're willing to take a chance on a bad credit score person, because remember, a bad credit score person eventually could become a good credit score person if they can do a couple of flips, or even one flip, profit 30 grand, pay off some of their debt, and their credit score will jump from 550 to 630 because they paid off all their debt. So, or 680, and they become a good credit score person. So that's our business model. It's not perfect, but for us, it works because we came through the fix and flip business. And so we know the assets, we know the renovations, and we know the contractors, and we know all the government guidelines. We know how to pull permits. We know what you're supposed to do. So we're really good at that. So we can take a chance on a lower credit person. All right, next slide.
Ready?
Okay, so remember, the other thing that came with this email is he sent pictures. You don't see that. You see a link to the comps on the email, but you don't see the actual attachments. So like I said, this was probably close to a perfect initial package that I want to see. And so what do I glean from the pictures, right? And so in this case, his renovation is $60,000. He goes through a bunch of stuff on what the renovation is. And so I could quickly take a look at these pictures on the next two slides, and I can verify that his budget is close enough to 60 grand. So I just do a macro level cursory check. I say, hey, look, these pictures look pretty good. And the most important thing that you see from these pictures is, what's the most important thing that you guys see? If you answered vacant, you are 100% correct. Condition, I care about, but more important than that, we care about vacant properties. Now, when we're buying properties into this market on our fix and flip business, and when we're lending into these properties, they have to be vacant. I repeat, they have to be vacant. And if they are not vacant, you need to either have an exit date with that person if they're selling it, which you should have anyway, or you must have a keys for cash agreement. If you do not have those things, we will not buy it and we will not do the deal right now. Courthouses are closed as far as evictions are concerned. They're starting to open back up in Northern Virginia. DC and Maryland, if you got an occupant in there, experience says it takes a very long time to get them out. So we're not going to risk any hard money, and we're not going to risk a purchase with an occupant in there. So believe it or not, the most important thing about these pictures is the fact that this property is vacant. Okay, next slide. Okay, so the next thing that we look at are comps. So I've already verified a bunch of things. I verified that the $60,000 budget is close enough. I mean, hey, we're within 10%. We're good, 15%. That's close enough for me. So the next thing, and we verified that it was vacant. Check, check, right? So now I'm trusting the borrower. This particular borrower was not a repeat borrower. This is a first-time borrower. However, this borrower came from a very good referral source, but I'm still verifying. So the next thing that I want to do is I want to verify the comps that he sent. Okay, so these are basically the comps that he sent. All right, you'll see these things that kind of match his number. His ARV is between 625 and 635. So you see a bunch of comps, 629, 618, 615. We could go into more detail if we have to, but we don't really need to for this exercise. So I'm close to verifying his ARV number. Now, one of the things that you need to look at is the actual square footage, 1156, 1080, 1156. So what that tells us is that we know that this is a 3-level property because he told us that it was 3 bedrooms, 2.5 baths. And so we sort of know the basics of the property. Like I said, it's also a 3-level property. Now, in DC and the semi-detached, even though it's not in these comps, like a 1080 means that it's going to have a 1080 on the top 2 levels, and then it's going to have a 540 in the basement. So that gives me a good idea of the square footage. So it's very important in DC that you need to know your square footage, because usable, livable square footage is where it's at, okay? So keep an eye on that square footage on these comps. And so then I'll take you into the next slide of what we do to verify this. Because not only you as the borrower, you're going to tell me what your ARV is, but the most important thing, is I'm going to verify the ARV because that's a very critical piece into how we build a loan. Okay, so then the next set of slides is part of our due diligence on a loan, and we're calling it the Clear Sky Financial Due Diligence. That's good, Sandra. Next slide. And so the first thing that we look at on each asset is the actual tax record. And so in this particular case, on 209 Oglethorpe Street, this is the basic tax record. So what I'm looking at are a bunch of things here. The most important thing is obviously the subdivision. DC is a little bit more challenging than the suburbs because the suburbs are very subdivision specific. DC is sort of subdivision specific, but you've got to kind of do a boundary of the streets because you might go across lines. So it's not that easy. So in this particular case, this property is located in Riggs Park. If you go to the bottom of this slide, you'll see something just as important. The property type is a semi-detached property. A semi-detached property is not a row home. It's not a single family house. It's basically in what we call in Virginia, a duplex. And so Maryland, I think they call it duplexes too, maybe semi-detached. In DC, they call it a semi-detached. So basically it's two properties side by side. So that's very important too. I got to understand the property type. Now, the third thing that we have to understand is this thing called taxable total assessment. I need to understand what the taxable assessment is on this property. So when I go to compare it to other properties, that's another one of my indicators. And so we create something called the tax assessment multiplier. We call it the TAM. So I kind of get a good idea of our property selling for 5% over tax assessment, or it's selling for 10% over tax assessment. And in this case, it's selling for about 50% over tax assessment. So if you just simply add 360 plus 180, you're going to get close to maybe what he thought his ARV is. So in this case, they're selling between 40 to 45% of tax assessment. Now, the next thing that we look at, which is the most important thing, that is the square footage. Now, remember, the square footage of this property is 900 over 450. Now, why is this important? Because the comps that he used had square footages of 1080 and 1150. So this square footage is 90% of what he used as comps. And so I'm very concerned there, right? Because the DC game is all about the square footage. I mean, any renovator, any developer, you know, they will tell you the name of the game in Washington, DC is square footage. So right now, I'm trusting, I'm sort of verifying, but I do have not a red flag, but I've got a yellow flag going up because the comps provided were not really in line with this asset type from a square footage standpoint, but that's okay, no big deal. So then what we do on the next slide is I then go and I pull my own comps. So let's look at something pretty critical here, and that there's a couple of things going on here. Now, the comps aren't exactly perfect in Riggs Park because the asset type that the borrower's bringing us isn't really included in the comps. There are no 900 over 450s available in Riggs Park or under contract or recently renovated. So I couldn't go there with the exact likeness. So what I did is I pulled comps that were close. Maybe one or two might have been similar to what he pulled. Okay, no problem. But the key one that I focused on is the active. What's going on in the active market? Well, we have a very beautiful renovated property at 620, 1,088 square feet. I've got one closed, 1,156 square feet at 615. Okay, now remember, our subject is about 90% of this. So then what I did is I said, okay, you think you have an after repair value of 625? I said, no, in this asset price, I just simply reduced it by about 7 to 8%. And I came up with a very nice conservative after repair value of 575. And so that's the after repair value that we're using on our loan, 575. And so usually what I do then next is, Sandra, go to the next slide, is not only do I share my findings with the borrower so that we're comparing apples to apples, orange to orange, we're comparing this. I'm saying, okay, in this case, Doug, I'm saying, Doug, I agree with your renovation price. I think your ARV is a little out of whack, a little bit, not much, but you know, remember though, if you're right, that money's gonna go into your pocket. We need to be right because we're building a loan based upon those two factors. So what I do to build a loan basically is I've got a simple loan spreadsheet, and I will tell you exactly what we're doing. Look at number 1, purchase price, straight from the email. He's buying it at 360. Remember, I haven't gotten a renovation budget yet. I haven't gotten a draw schedule yet, and I haven't really gotten a ratified contract. We're just building the loan. This is not a live deal yet. So first thing I do, I pop in the purchase price at 360. I'm okay with the $60,000 renovation, but I'm popping in my ARV. At this point in time, we're the gatekeeper. So we have to agree on the ARV. In this particular case, he was fine with it, no big deal. But it really didn't impact the loan that much because we were only off maybe, 50 grand, 60 grand. So it wasn't that big of a deal as we're building the loan. And remember, he requested a loan amount of 420. That's key as well. And I keep that in mind because that's important because I need to understand that. So then what I do, if you go to section 2 and you look at this thing called the LTV of the ARV, that is the loan to value of the after repair value. And so in this case, it wasn't that much of a renovation. 60,000 isn't a big deal for us in DC. If it gets to be about 150 or more, I'm gonna jack that number down from 70% to between 60 and 65%. I'm gonna lower it. But in this case, I felt comfortable loaning on 70% of the ARV, right? So I get a number at 402,500. Okay, so that's one of my parameters. Pretty decent. I'm okay with that. So I'll give him a $400,000 loan. The second parameter that I look at is the LTC parameter. What that stands for is loan to cost. Basically, what the loan to cost is, it's basically the 360 purchase price plus the $60,000 renovation price. And so we get a number of $420,000. And so what I want to do, normally I'll look at, maybe a 90% LTC. I'm comfortable with that. But I was comfortable with the sophistication of this borrower that I felt like he knew what he was doing. And so I liked his renovation budget. I liked a lot of things about this borrower. And oh, by the way, he had a pretty high credit score. At least that's what he told me. It was in the low sevens. And so I was okay with that. So in this particular case, even though our new parameters post-COVID is probably LTC 85 to 90%, I felt comfortable. I felt comfortable going to 95%. So that gave me a number of about 399. So now I'm within my 70% LTV of the ARV. It's got a small renovation. This guy's going to be able to knock that renovation down. So if you look on section 3, the proposed loan back to this borrower is $400,000. So then what I do is I package up this spreadsheet, put it into a PDF. I send it back to the borrower saying, look, we could do a loan for your project at $400,000, but the loan is going to look like 340,000 of it is going to go to your purchase and $60,000 of it is going to go to your renovation. So we're doing 100% renovation on this case and 340 towards his purchase of 360. Now the $60,000 renovation is going to be broken down into 3 draws of 20,000. So now if you go down to section 4, it then defines to the borrower how much cash he's going to have into the deal. So he's going to have a $20,000 down payment towards his purchase, and the closing costs are going to be, approximately $20,000. So his expectation is he's going to have $40,000 into this deal. And so I send that back to him. And then what happens is he comes back and says, hey, that's fine, because remember, this guy wanted a requested loan amount of 420. I'm not really meeting the mail there, but I am meeting the mail with a $400,000 loan. He came back and said, yeah, that's fine. I then request ratified contract, renovation budget, draw schedule. He sends it back. I actually get a point of contact from the title company. I send him back a 1-page term sheet. Bang, boom, bam. The loan is done. Less than a week, and it's closing today. And so that's how basically we build a loan. It's very simple. It's very straightforward. And the term sheet is 1 page. And this thing is getting closed in seven actual days, maybe 8 actual days or less. And that is a typical deal for us. Any
Great,
questions?
thanks, Charlie. There is a question out here. If you guys have questions, definitely send them in the question box. Are all of your loans non-recourse, or do you have any loans that are non-recourse?
100% of loans are non-recourse. honestly, we don't have time to chase bad borrowers. Honestly, just hand us the asset. We don't have time for it. Especially in Washington, D.C. None of our loans are personally guaranteed. And the reason behind that is it's all about the foreclosure process. We don't want you to have consumer rights. We don't want you to have arbitration, and we don't want you to have the ability to hold us up. We don't want it to be a judicial process in D.C. We want it to be a non-judicial process. We want to be able to either foreclose, do a deed in lieu of foreclosure, get our property back so we can get in that asset, renovate it, and put it on the market. Now, this doesn't happen very often with the majority of our borrowers, and I mean 97.5%, 98% of our borrowers are all good. They do good work. The percentage of the borrowers that don't, remember though, we have a good communication line going with our borrowers, even if they're failing on a project. So 9 times out of 10, they're just going to come to us with troubles. But we're going to know about troubles at the very beginning of the project. So like, for example, if we're giving this guy out a $20,000 draw, his first draw, and if he doesn't meet his draw 1 milestones, then we're gonna be in trouble. We might take the project back right then and there, because if he's not meeting the mail, then we need to know right up front. So we know within a month, and so it's very important for these guys to be on time and on schedule. And so what we do that nobody else does is we do a pre-draw. So remember, in this particular case, we're going to send this guy, our borrower, first $20,000 draw. As a matter of fact, he's closing today. We're probably going to send it to him tomorrow, but he's already sent me a draw 1 milestone. And so it's very, very important for him to get draw 2 that he meets draw 1. And so we don't have any, all of our loans are non-recourse. We don't want any troubles. We don't want these things to be successful. If they're not, give us back the house. We'll take care of it.
Okay. For this particular deal, what is the general carrying cost? And then what was the time to flip, or what is the time to flip?
All right. So since it's Washington, D.C., because things are a little bit more complicated in DC, sometimes you got to deal with DCRA, you've got to get your permits, got to get it approved, you got to have your architectural diagrams. We give a 9-month term in DC, and we give a 3-month extension added in. We might change those parameters a little bit, but basically in DC, we do a 9-month, 3-month. In Northern Virginia, where the market's hot, we're probably going to do a 6-month, 3-month. And that's basically the way it is. And then our points and terms, I could send brochures out to you guys if you don't already have them, but we're interest only. We have no prepayment penalty. So if we give you a 9-month loan and you're out of it in 4 months, then you're not paying 5 months of that term. There's no prepayment penalty. So for us though, the name of the game is execution. It's getting the property renovated and it's getting it on the market and it's getting it sold. And so that's the name of the game. And so for us, there's a monthly interest only payment. If some of the assets are so high in ARV compared to the loan amount, I might build in, 3 or 6 months of payments into the loan. And so you don't have to really make payments. And so that's basically the way we do it.
All right, questions are coming in now. What is your cost for a draw request?
Usually it's running at $250. So if we have repeat borrowers and we know the quality of their work, and if they're using one of our preferred contractors, then we won't charge a draw fee just because we know the quality of the contractor and we know the quality of the borrower. But at the onset, it's running $250 a draw because either myself, Sam, not me, has to show up and make sure that these guys are meeting the mail as far as the contractors. And if they're not meeting the mail, then like I said, we put a halt to it until that contractor gets on track.
Since you're speaking about it, can you talk about the draw schedule too, one of you guys, as you're talking?
Yeah, we have a template draw schedule, and if anyone wants to see it, they can send us a quick note or an email. And it just breaks out the project by at a pretty granular level. Okay, I'm going to renovate all the plumbing at this point, the electrical at this point, do the paint at this point, the roof, and so forth. And so we're looking for those milestones to be met at the end of the draw period. So we'll give a pre-draw. It's very distinctive from some of our competitors who give you the money after you've done the work. So we'll give you the money in advance of doing the work, but before we give you the next draw, we do need to see that all of that work is completed. So in the first draw, generally I'll be present on site, and then I'll understand the entire project and its scope. And if on the second draw, then a complete video of it will generally suffice, unless the project has a lot of subtlety that needs to be gone over. But a video of everything that's been done, and a walk around of the entire property is sufficient for the second draw review. So we can do draws on the same day as the request after the first site visit.
Okay. Let's see. Are all your deals requiring a down payment?
Yes.
Yeah, post COVID. Yeah, because and I talked about this earlier. Pre-COVID, I could go to 95 to 100% loan to cost when we had a good idea of where the market was heading. Post-COVID, 6 to 9 months from now, honestly, we kind of have a crystal ball, but we're not sure. We think we're at the peak of the market. And so we're pricing in to the peak of the market. And so we're having these borrowers have a little bit more skin in the game, way less than our competitors. I still think from a 90% LTC, I think we're probably the top. And so the days of the 100% on LTCs, they're gone for a minute. I don't even think any of our competitors ever offered it. We were one of the only ones in the area that even offered it. And so we're down to about 85 to 90% LTC. So we want to see more skin in the game from the borrower, because if this market turns, you might have to turn your property into a rental, and you're going to have to refinance us out. So at least at that point, if you have 10% skin in the game, you're already buying it at a 30% equity position, you have to turn into a rental. Well, you're going to have to refinance us out as a rental, because you don't want to keep us hanging out there more than 9 months. Trust me, our cost of funds too is a little too high, and it's too expensive from a rental standpoint. So you got to have the ability to refinance us out in case this market turns. And so the days of 100% for us, unless I love the asset, I had a deal where the guy wanted 250 on an asset free and clear, and the asset fixed up was worth 750. All right, I sent the 250 out. I priced in 6 months worth of payments. Okay, we're totally, in the clear as far as that asset's concerned. Even if the market tanks 30%, we're in the clear. So it's case by case, but those 100% deals are, they've gone away. They're kind of gone at this point. I don't know if they're ever going to come back.
Okay,
It's a good
great.
question.
In Virginia, are they non-recourse and same LTV? What is your minimum loan size?
In Virginia, you do sign a personal guarantee. We've never once pursued a personal guarantee, but it does keep an additional checkpoint for us, so we can motivate people to give us a deed in lieu of foreclosure, so they don't just let it lay fallow and wait for whatever happens in the foreclosure marketplace. Our goal is, if a person's not having success with their project, that they just turn it back over to us and we move forward. And the other aspects of the question, I'm sorry, Sandra, were what's the LTV in Virginia?
Yes.
Or the LTC? Yeah, we're
LTC.
keeping it about the same as Charlie described what we're doing in the district.
All right. We have about 7 minutes, 5 minutes left, and a few more questions. Have rates gone up due to COVID?
No, as a matter of fact, for us, we've kept everything the same. I mean, we haven't changed. I mean, maybe a half a point here or there, but we've kept everything the same. We've never changed. And the reason why we didn't change is because pre-COVID, I mean, we're going to be a little bit higher than a lot of the old guys back in the day. The Washington Capital Partners of the world, the Walnuts of the world. We're going to be a lot higher because we never had a broker model. We've never sold our loans. We've always kept our loans, and so we understand what it takes to take a property back and renovate it, and the time it takes to finally get our money back. So by us keeping our rates high, that sort of kept us in the game, and we've never left the game. And so we've been in this business for almost 7 years, and the COVID startled us a little bit, but it certainly didn't take us out of the game. And because we were able to keep our rates a little bit higher, this is what kept us in the game. And so I don't anticipate a change either way. We're going to stay the same, because at the end of the day, whether you're talking a 12 or 13% interest only payment versus a 8, 9, or 10, if you're executing your project and you're round tripping in 120 to 150 days, it doesn't matter, because it's all interest only. And so if you do the difference between a 13 or a 12 compared to a 9 interest only, and you're out in 120 days, come on, that's negligible. But the other difference is that you're going to be paying less in capital than you are with a competitor where you might be able to get 9%. You might be putting up, 70, 75% LTC. With us, you're putting up much lower. So it just depends. Do you want a higher rate of return on your money, the ROI on your cash? I would, or do you want to get that rate and put up more capital? Just depends. But we didn't raise our rates, and we're certainly not going to lower them just because of the space we're in. We're in an asset-based lending space. There are risks associated with it. There are borrower risks who have bad credit that might slip through the cracks. But hey, that's the nature of our business. We get it. And so we're in it for the long haul.
Okay. Quick one here. Do you lend in other states like Texas?
We do. We lend in Texas underneath the arm Clear Sky Nation. So go to clearskynation.com. The difference is building a loan for us. Remember, I'm building a loan because we're a direct lender. In Texas, the process is different. You're going to have to go through an application process. You're going to have to go through a soft credit check process. And so initially, you're going to have to go through these things. And you're still going to have to send the borrower package that was sent when we built the loan, ARV, renovation, asset type, description, those kinds of things. And so we do lend in Texas, but the process is just a little bit different. The other thing that's different is that if you want a 7-day close, that's an IXNA. It might take 14 business days, maybe to 20 to get that loan to close. But we do lend in, I think, 43 states plus DC on the, but we're not a direct lender. I have to broker it out, but I have outlets across the country. And so, yeah, we do.
All right. Last two questions here. This one, or there are two related to you saying in the beginning that you talked about a possible turn in the market. What are you thinking, with respect to that within the next year?
Well, a couple things. Number one, we talked about the election cycle. Historically, the election cycle, the markets come to a halt from October. Then you got Thanksgiving and Christmas. So it's basically a halt until Inauguration Day, historically. This year, we have a pandemic. We could have a second wave of that pandemic, and that's going to cause a wrinkle in things. If we have a new administration, we think twofold. We think there's going to be an increase in taxes. Somebody's going to have to pay this tax bill that the SBA is putting on us, all this free money. So taxes are going to increase. And with a change in administration, I'm pretty sure interest rates are going to increase too. And the other big factor, there's two other factors that we think are going to impact this market. Factor number one, the people that normally would have sold in the spring in a robust spring market didn't sell. They didn't come to the market. They've got to come to the market soon. We were thinking they were going to come to the market in the summer. We're not seeing it. So they're either going to come to the market next spring. The other thing that we see, they're obviously going to be an increase to foreclosures because you can't keep doing these forbearances and you can't keep these guys from not foreclosing. So eventually the foreclosures are going to come to the market. So we just see a very churning of the market. We can't predict it now, but we think at the bare minimum, we think it's going to be a neutral market come springtime, maybe late winter. And so market might tick down a little bit, but we're just being very cautious at this moment into the future of the market. We're not crying wolf. It's still a good market, but we just are cautious 6 to 9 months from now. Sam, anything to add?
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, I think that's got it.
All right, thanks, guys. There are a couple more questions, but we are going to send these out to you and after the webinar. I'm trying to read as I'm trying to close up here. So we'd like to thank Sam and Charlie, for this informative session. They can be reached at email addresses. Let's see. Those are email addresses for Sam and Charlie.
Before that, Sandra, go up top.
Well, I'm going to talk about that next because I'm going to throw in a plug for, and the last question was related to the educational aspect of the business. And I know we've been talking about that for the last 2 webinars. So someone was asking, do we plan to offer, these courses and what is the plan to offer the courses? So one thing that, we were talking about is having another, class called Financing Real Estate Deals in about 2 weeks. So on July 9th, we are looking for folks to volunteer for yet another, one-day class. We're going to test out the curriculum again for the financing a real estate deal. So if you're available on Thursday, July 9th from 9:30 to 4:30, again, this is just like the one that we had in the past one that we had on real estate investing. If you are available and you have time to be in the session all day, you want to make sure that you respond to a survey that I will send out after this class. So do you guys want to offer anything on, when the real estate investing coursework or courses will be rolled out, and what's the plan for that, if any?
Well, our goal is to have the Survivor Series classes finished, I don't know, I would say end of July, and that's about 6 courses. So we're going to get those finished by the end of July. And so we're basically waiting on the pandemic to open up, because in a perfect world, we want to give these courses real time in person. But if we got to go to an internet model, I guess we'll have to end up doing that. But I think what we're going to end up doing is going to a hybrid internet model versus being in person, because I think it's a lot more powerful when it's in person. And so our whole goal is the reason why we're a little delayed on this, is we want to see what happens with the pandemic and when things start to open up, so we can give these things maybe in a socially distanced classroom.
Yes, yes,
So
indeed.
that's the plan on that.
Okay.
I do have one question from one of our borrowers, though, that I need to address, if that's okay, Sandra.
We're over time now, but if you guys need to drop, you can. If you want to hear this last nugget from Charlie, feel free to hang on.
All right, from Michael Townsend, he asked, can you explain your process if I'm buying at auction or courthouse steps? I guess there's 2 processes. I'll talk about it from the fix and flip side. Number 1, when you're bidding at auctions or courthouse steps, especially the courthouse steps, you have to have an envelope full of cashier checks in order to bid. I'll carry around, I don't know, $40,000 or $50,000 of cashier checks made out to myself when I bid at courthouse steps. And what we do is we have a daily spreadsheet of all the foreclosures in Fairfax, Prince William, Arlington, Alexandria City, and DC. And so what I do when I show up at an auction is I know the obviously the auction date and times. I know the assets. And so what I do is I build the after repair value of the asset, and then I have a generic high bid value that I'll go up to. And so I have a cheat sheet. And so, a lot of times if the asset's worth $300,000, I might bid 70% of that up to 210. And if the auction goes over 210, then, we're not a bidder. But the other thing that I do at courthouse auctions is that I make sure I go and check the house. Right now in a pandemic, the house had better be vacant, or else, we probably won't bid on it. So the house has got to be vacant. Now, if you're bidding on an online auction, same kind of thing. You got to keep track of your max bid amount. But more importantly, though, at a courthouse step auction, there is no buyer premium. But on an online auction, whether it's Hubzu, Exome, Auction.com, Realty Bid, whatever, there's usually a 5% buyer premium. So you've got to factor in that 5% buyer premium into the auction price. Now, from a hard money standpoint, and I have these people ask me this question all the time, we do not give out earnest money deposit checks. We do not give out any money until we close the deal and we have a recordable deed of trust and promissory note. That's the only time we lend money. So I have had people ask me questions if I would give them their deposit checks in the various auctions. And so the answer is no. So you're going to have to come up with your earnest money deposits or your cashier check deposits at the various auctions.
But if you know you're going to bid, reach out to us. Let us know what you're bidding on. Let us help you through the process and understand the values.
Yeah, we're more welcome.
You don't want to end up winning a bid and not having any financing around it.
Yeah.
True. Great. Thank you, Sam and Charlie. We do have a few more questions, but we will answer those in email given the time. Thank you both for this great session, and we will talk to you all in the next probably 2 to 3 weeks. We'll have another webinar. And again, if you're interested in the July 9th class, I will send out a survey, and if you can make your interest known, we will select another probably 10 to 15 participants to attend that session. Thank you all. Have a good day.
Thanks, Sandra.
Thank you, Sandra. Thanks for attending.